Picture this. It's the dead of night. You're deep in a dreamless sleep, and your phone rips through the silence. You fumble to pick it up, squinting at the screen. An unknown number, one you've never seen before. You answer, and a voice you've never heard in your life calmly tells you, "I'm standing right outside your house." You part the curtain just an inch, and there he is, a stranger, motionless, staring straight at your window. How would you feel? That bone-chilling dread, that paralyzing confusion. This is exactly the kind of true horror that rips your sense of safety to shreds.
My name is Sam, and I've been living in the States for years now. Came over from a small town in the Middle East a long time ago. Back then, the plan was simple. Work a few years, stack up some cash, and head back home. But life has a nasty habit of rewriting your plans. One thing led to another. Better gigs, marriage, kids. And before I knew it, the US became my permanent home. I even got my citizenship. But here's the thing about a man. No matter where he roams, the place where his parents raised him, where he played as a kid, that place never really leaves his bones.
Back in my hometown, there's an old family house, the same one where I spent my earliest years. That courtyard, those creaky rooms, the veranda, the ancient trees out back. Every corner is packed with memories I can't shake. Whenever I go back to visit, I always make it a point to spend a few days there, soaking it all in. Sometimes I'd go every year. Sometimes work got in the way and 2 years would slip by. Mostly I'd plan it around summer break, so the kids could come along and see where their old man grew up.
But I didn't just want to show them malls and relatives' houses. I wanted them to see the real deal. The mountains, the rivers, the wild forests I used to tell them about back in our living room in Ohio. See, I've always had a thing for old vehicles. New cars never did it for me. I was all about vintage trucks, rugged Jeeps, and especially off-road beasts. Over the years, I collected a few back at the old house, restoring them myself, piece by piece. But one of them was special. A beast of a truck I'd built specifically for off-road trips and camping. The tires were thicker and tougher than anything you'd find on a regular rig. The suspension sat high, so the undercarriage wouldn't scrape on jagged, rocky trails. I'd bolted on a heavy-duty bumper up front and mounted powerful spotlights on the roof. Lights that could punch through darkness way farther than any ordinary headlights. On mountain roads at night, those lights weren't just accessories. They were essential. The back of the truck I'd converted into a full-on camper van, complete with sleeping bunks, a tiny kitchen, a water tank, a mini fridge, solar panels, and extra batteries. I always kept a stash of dry rations, drinking water, a comprehensive medical kit, warm clothes, ropes, tools, spare tires, fuel, flashlights, power banks, compasses, maps, everything a man could need when taking his family into the boondocks. I never half-assed my prep work. I also had a separate tent, though usually my wife and kids slept inside the camper. My rule was simple. The family stays in the safe zone. I'd crash outside if I had to. I even carried safety gear and a licensed firearm. Not for show, but strictly for worst-case scenarios. Over the years, I'd driven through some of the gnarliest terrain you could imagine. Roads where one side was a sheer rock wall and the other was a drop into a 1,000-foot void. I'd been trapped by landslides, broken down in the middle of nowhere, and stuck for days because of blizzards and heavy rains. But through it all, I never panicked, because I always knew what I was dealing with. If the truck broke, I fixed it. If
If the road was blocked, I waited. If the weather turned, I found shelter. Real fear, the kind that paralyzes you, doesn't come from obstacles you can see. It comes when you have absolutely no clue what's happening to you. This particular story goes back about 2 years. Before we flew back to the old country, I'd already decided that this time we'd take a less traveled route through the Northern Highlands. I won't name the exact spot because it's still a dangerous road today, and I don't want some curious thrill seeker trying to find it just to chase a story. 2 days after we arrived, I drove the truck to a workshop and supervised every inch of the inspection myself. Engine oil, brake fluid, suspension, tire tread, everything. I told the mechanics not to prep it for a joyride, but for a trek where help could be hours or days away. Once the truck was dialed in, I started loading gear. Water bottles, extra drinking water, dry rations, tea, milk, biscuits, kids' snacks, easy cook meals, a gas cylinder, cookware, blankets, and my bulletproof medical kit. My wife watched the mountain of supplies grow and laughed. "You pack like we're not coming back for 2 weeks." I shot back. In the mountains, the thing you think is useless at home becomes the thing you'd kill for on the road. She knew my quirks by then, knew I wasn't one to leave anything to chance. We decided to roll out at night. Less traffic, and the kids would conk out for a while, making the drive smoother. My plan was to drive through the night and reach a high-altitude meadow nestled between the peaks by the next evening. We'd set up camp there, spend the night, and wake up to watch the sunrise blaze over the mountains. We pulled out of the house around 9:30 p.m. The kids were hyped, constantly asking when we'd hit the mountains. One was glued to a tablet watching cartoons, another was rifling through the gear inside the rig. My wife sat up front with me. The city lights slowly shrank in the rearview mirror, fading like memories as we pushed deeper into the night. First came the big highways, then smaller towns, and finally a stretch where the road was practically deserted. Hours rolled by. The kids got quiet. 2 of them passed out in their bunks, while the third was half asleep, still clutching his tablet. My wife and I chatted in fits and starts, sometimes just sitting in comfortable silence. Outside, it was pitch black. At first, we'd see tiny houses, roadside stalls, or the occasional glow of another vehicle. But eventually, even those vanished. The road started narrowing, mountains and thick trees pressing in on both sides. At some spots, the road was so tight that if another vehicle came from the opposite direction, one of us would have to reverse for what felt like miles. I flipped on the auxiliary off-road lights, that harsh white beam sweeping across the rocks and tree trunks. But something felt off that night. Despite the flood of light, the darkness seemed thicker, heavier than it should have been. We could barely make out the road ahead, and the second the light stopped hitting an area, it was swallowed by absolute blackness. Once in a while, a branch would drift into the beam and vanish the moment we passed. My wife glanced at the side mirror, then asked, "You've been on this road before?" I told her I'd driven parts of it, but further up was new to me too. She paused, then said softly, "I don't like this road." I gave her a reassuring smile and said it was just the night playing tricks. Tomorrow, these same hills would look beautiful. I soothed her worries, but if I'm being honest, a low-level unease was gnawing at me too. I had a habit of memorizing routes, every turn, every climb, every water source, but I noticed a particular curve wasn't showing up when it should. By my calculations, we should have cleared that turn 15 or 20 minutes ago. but we were still driving straight and zigzagging without hitting that landmark. I checked the speedometer. Speed was normal. The truck was running fine. Fuel was good. I figured maybe I'd misjudged the time. I didn't mention it to my wife because she was already on edge. Then we entered a stretch where the left side was a steep, rocky wall, and the right side fell away into a deep ravine. I slowed down even more. Small, loose stones scattered across the asphalt crunched under our massive tires. Other than the engine's low hum and the stones grinding beneath us, the whole area was dead silent. Then, around the next bend, something stepped right into our beam. I slammed the brakes. The truck shuddered to a halt. My wife grabbed the dashboard, startled. "What is it?" I pointed forward. Right in the middle of the road stood an animal. My first thought was a big feral dog. But when the headlights fully hit its body, I realized it was a wolf. Not unusual for the area, but its behavior was anything but normal. It was planted dead center, staring straight at us. Its coat was matted and dusty, ears standing straight, eyes catching the light with an eerie glint. Normally, wild animals bolt at the first roar of an engine or blinding headlight. Not this one. I honked. The sound echoed off the mountains and bounced back. The wolf flicked its ears, but didn't budge. I laid on the horn longer this time. Then I eased the truck forward, thinking it would back off. It took 2 steps back, then stopped. Its head was still locked on us. Not just the truck, but on us. Like it could see right through the windshield. I glanced in the rear view. Kids were fine. 2 were dead asleep. The third had dropped his tablet, the cartoon still playing silently. I looked back at the wolf. Its hackles were rising now. It slowly turned its head to the left, toward the dense forest. It stared into the trees for a long moment. Then it snapped its gaze back to us, and its whole posture shifted. Front paws planted firm, head low, like it was terrified of something else in the dark. Not us. Something behind it. My wife grabbed my arm. "Back up," she whispered. I checked the side mirror. The road behind was narrow and winding. Maneuvering that beast of a truck in reverse on that uneven ground was next to impossible. I told her I'd just honk it out of the way. I hit the horn a 3rd time. That's when we heard it. The frantic rustle of dry leaves from the forest on the left. Something big was moving through the brush, fast. The wolf spun to face the noise, but it didn't even get a chance to run. Before we could process it, the animal's entire body lifted off the ground. Not like it jumped, but like it had been snatched. We saw no hand, no paw, no body, no shadow. Just the wolf, suspended in the air directly in front of our lights, its legs thrashing wildly. A screech tore out of its mouth. Nothing like a normal howl or bark. It was cut short, but packed so much raw terror that my wife screamed before she could stop herself. Then, in an instant, the animal was yanked sideways into the trees. The bushes shook violently. Dead leaves flew everywhere. And the sickening sound of something heavy being dragged echoed for a few seconds. Then, silence. Complete and total. I was frozen. My fingers felt locked on the steering wheel. My wife's grip on my arm was almost painful.
Neither of us spoke for a long moment. Back in the camper, the kids were still out cold. The two older ones didn't stir, and the youngest barely shifted before dozing off again. My wife's voice cracked with panic. "Get us out of here, now." I hit the gas. As we rolled past that spot, I tried not to look at the woods. But your brain is a sick joke. It makes you stare right at what scares you. I glanced left for just a second. Nothing but deep shadows between the trunks.
No animal, no person, no movement. Just a few leaves trembling, though there wasn't any wind. I faced forward and sped up. We sat in heavy silence for a long time, just the engine and tires humming. We were both thinking the same thing. Where did that wolf go? What grabbed it? And if something bigger was hunting out there, why couldn't we see it? Eventually, my wife whispered, "You saw the same thing I did, right?" I nodded. She said, "It didn't run away on its own." I paused and said, No, it didn't." She immediately started reciting prayers under her breath. I joined her. I kept trying to rationalize. Maybe it was a mountain leopard hidden in the brush. Maybe the intense lights and noise had messed with our perception. But with every theory came the same question. If it was a leopard, how did it lift the wolf into the air? And why didn't we see even a flash of movement? I forced those thoughts down. I decided we'd push on to the meadow, ride out the rest of the night there, and bail at first light. No arguing. Just get through the hours. About an hour later, the road began climbing steeply. The switchbacks got tighter. So tight I almost had to bring the truck to a dead stop to turn. Rock wall on one side, sheer drop on the other. Somewhere below we could hear the faint rush of water, but it was too dark to see whether it was a river or a waterfall. My wife had gone quiet again. Finally, after what felt like forever, the climb ended. Our camper rolled into a wide open meadow. This was it, the spot I'd been aiming for. Mountains ringed us in every direction. On one side, the dirt road we'd come up on wound back down into the valley. On another, the ground just stopped, dropping into a deep void. Behind us was the same dense forest. Ahead, nothing but the silhouette of distant peaks. No houses, no lights, no voices. Just our truck, our lights, and that vast, empty meadow. I found a reasonably level patch, parked, set the handbrake, chalked the wheels, and extended the jacks to stabilize the rig. When I killed the engine, the silence hit like a physical weight. The first time I'd felt real, unbroken quiet. The moment the engine died, it felt like the whole world had gone mute. No birds, no insects, no wind. Not even the trees whispered. I stood outside for a minute, scanning the area. My wife came to the door. "We're really staying here?" she asked, her voice laced with doubt. I told her going back down right now was more dangerous. We'd leave at sunrise. She wasn't happy, but she knew I was right. The road down was treacherous. The night was deep, and the kids were exhausted. I looked inside. The kids were crashed in their bunks. One of my boys was sprawled out so bad, there was no room for my wife to lie down inside. I suggested we let the kids have the camper, and we crash in the small tent I brought. She resisted at first, didn't like the idea of sleeping outside after what we'd seen. But I convinced her. The tent would be right next to the truck. The kids would be locked inside, and I had my flashlight and gear close. I set up the folding tent, unrolled the mats, and laid out sleeping bags, water, flashlights, and the wireless gear. Then I opened the side kitchen, lit the stove, and started warming up some food. We were both starving. I woke the kids just long enough for them to eat a few bites before they passed out again. I was heating up tea when my wife suddenly looked up. "Did you hear that?" she asked. I turned down the burner. For a few seconds, absolute silence. Then, from down toward the ravine, came the unmistakable sound of loose stones scraping, like a footfall on gravel. A single step. Silence. Then another step. Then a small rock tumbling into the dark. I grabbed my flashlight and walked toward the meadow's edge. Below was absolute blackness. I swept the beam down into the ravine. Rocks, bushes, grass. No person, no animal. I waited. Then I started to turn back. That's when the footfalls came again. This time from the exact spot where something seemed to be climbing up. 2 steps. Pause. Another step. I aimed the light again. Nothing visible. But the sound was getting closer. Whatever it was struggling up the steep slope. My wife was now standing near the kids, voice trembling. An animal? I didn't answer. Animals don't climb with that kind of deliberate, measured rhythm. I muttered, maybe a local, but even I didn't believe me. Who climbs out of a deep ravine at this hour without a light? I stood frozen at the edge. The footsteps were so close now. Then, they stopped. Like whoever or whatever was climbing had reached the top and just halted. I swept the flashlight over the edge again. Rocks, grass. Then, for a split second, I thought I saw a dark head rise up from behind a stone. I whipped the beam right to that spot. Nothing. I took a few steps back. At that exact moment, a pebble rolled into the ravine right below me, its clatter echoing down for what felt like an eternity before silence returned. I stood there, flashlight in hand, keenly aware that something was down there, something watching us. The kind of primal dread that makes the hair on your arms stand up hit me like a jolt. I couldn't see it, but I knew, for the first time, that we shouldn't have stopped here. I stared into the darkness, sweeping light over stones and bushes, but the footsteps I'd heard mere moments ago were nowhere to be seen. My wife called from behind, trying to hide the tremor in her voice, telling me to come back. I gave the ravine one last sweep, then slowly backed away to the truck. I told her I hadn't seen anything, probably just an animal. She shot back, but that sounded like footsteps, human footsteps. I paused, then offered a weak explanation. Sounds get distorted at night. Echoes bounce off the mountains. Maybe a rock fell and it just sounded like steps. We both knew it was flimsy. But sometimes you just want a story that lets you breathe for a few moments. I relit the stove and heated the food again. My wife stayed close to the kids, glancing at the meadow, then at the dark tree line. We barely spoke. I woke the kids for a few more bites, but they were half conscious and barely ate. One of them took a few nibbles, another just drank water, and the youngest opened his eyes just long enough to burrow deeper into the blanket. I figured that was best. At least they were oblivious to the tension. After we ate, I cleaned up, killed the stove, and stowed everything away. I locked the camper door and checked the kids one last time. Then my wife and I slipped into the tent. I placed the flashlight, the wireless gear, and the firearm right beside me. The tent was just a few steps from the truck. If the kids needed us, we'd hear them. But even lying down, my mind wouldn't shut off. The wolf's scream, the shaking bushes, the steps climbing up from the ravine, and that face that might have peeked from behind a stone. I zipped the tent fully, got into my sleeping bag. My wife lay on the other side, then whispered, "Do you think we should leave right now?" I waited. Truth was, my gut wasn't sold on staying either. But the road down was too dangerous in the dark. The zigzags, the narrow bends, the ravine that had no guardrails. The kids were asleep. If I drove now, exhaustion and darkness could turn this into a catastrophe. I said, "Leaving now is the bigger risk. It's just a few hours. We roll at daybreak." She went quiet. I told her to recite some prayers and try to sleep. She did, and after a while I felt her breathing even out. But I stayed awake for a long time, listening to the silence. There was no sound outside. Nothing. The silence was so complete that I could hear the faint rustle of my own clothes when I shifted. Every small movement of the sleeping bag sounded unnaturally loud. Fatigue eventually started to win, and my eyelids grew heavy. I didn't fall completely asleep. I was in that gray zone where your body shuts down, but your mind still registers the world around you. Maybe you've been there, lying in bed, eyes closed, knowing what's in the room, but too drained to open your eyes or move. That's where I was. Then I heard it. The slow, deliberate sound of the tent zipper being opened. I thought, in my haze, maybe my wife was going to check on the kids. I kept my eyes closed. A few seconds later, a wave of cold air washed over me. Then I heard the rustle of fabric. Light footsteps, 2 or 3. Then the zipper again, this time zipped from outside. My mind registered everything, but exhaustion weighed me down like concrete. I figured she'd be right back. I don't know when I slipped into deeper sleep after that. Minutes, maybe longer. Suddenly, my eyes snapped open. For a few disoriented moments, I had no clue where I was. Then the mountains, the camp, the night drive flooded back. I reached over to my wife's side. Empty. Her sleeping bag was tossed aside. She wasn't in the tent. Then I remembered the zipper. I shot upright. "Aisha?" I called softly. No answer. I grabbed the flashlight, unzipped the tent, and scrambled out. The camper's dim parking lights cast a weak glow across the meadow. Everywhere else was black. I checked the camper. The door was shut. Maybe she'd gone to the kids. But then I caught movement near the tree line. There, at the edge of the field, near the forest, a woman was walking. She wore the exact same clothes as my wife. Same color, same shawl, same build. I was certain it was Aisha. I called out her name. She didn't stop. I grabbed my flashlight and started walking toward her. She wasn't moving fast, but her steps were steady. A single, unbroken pace. Her head was bowed, arms hanging almost motionless at her sides. She didn't once turn back. "Aisha, stop!" I yelled louder this time. No response. My mind raced. Maybe she was sleepwalking, but I'd never seen her like this.
The tree line was close now. A few more steps and she'd disappear between the trunks. I quickened my pace. The ground was uneven. Grass, stones, small holes. I nearly tripped, fighting to keep the flashlight steady as I ran. As I got near, I cast the full beam on her. The white light hit her head, shoulders, back, and it was unmistakably my wife. The edge of her shawl moved with her stride. But something was deeply wrong. Even with the harsh light on her, she didn't react. No head turn, no speed change, no hand shielding her eyes. She just kept walking.
That's when real terror flooded me. I called out again, "Aisha!" And in that same instant, a voice from behind me said, "Sam?" I froze. That was my wife's voice. I turned slowly. There she was, standing by the camper door, staring at me with disbelief and confusion. "What are you doing out there?" she asked. For a few seconds, I felt like the ground had vanished under my feet. I whipped the flashlight back toward the forest. The woman was still there, maybe a few steps ahead. But as soon as the light hit the trees, nothing. No woman. No shadow. No movement. Just empty space. I stood frozen. My wife rushed over to me. "What happened? Who were you calling?" I tried to steady my breathing. If I told her I'd just chased a copy of her into the woods, she'd have made us start the truck and bolt down the mountain right then. And honestly, I was too rattled to even speak the truth aloud. I lied. "I woke up and you weren't in the tent. I thought you went toward the forest." She said she'd just gone to check on the kids and stepped out. I asked, "When did you unzip the tent?" She said a few minutes ago. I fell silent. That meant the zipper sound I'd heard in my half-asleep state, and the cold draft might not have been her at all. I looked back at the tree line once more. The trees stood absolutely still. I said, "Let's go back." We returned to the tent. She asked again, "Did you see something?" I averted my eyes. Maybe my mind was playing tricks, half asleep. She studied me for a moment, not fully convinced, but let it drop. We lay back down. This time I checked the zipper myself and locked it completely. I placed the flashlight close to my chest. She said, "I won't be able to sleep now." "Just a little longer," I replied, but I didn't know how much was left. I checked my phone. Nearly 3 a.m. Time felt like it had stalled. We lay awake for a while. Then exhaustion and the relentless stress dragged us back under. I can't say exactly when. This time, I woke to my wife's hand gently shaking my arm. I opened my eyes, and she immediately put a finger to her lips, signaling for silence. Then she pointed outside. I held my breath and listened. At first, nothing. Then, from the distant forest, a sound. Thud. Pause. Again. Thud. Another pause. Then, thud again. It sounded rhythmic, like someone methodically swinging an axe into a tree. The blows were far away, but in the complete stillness of the night, they cut through like a drumbeat. My wife whispered, "Is someone chopping wood?" I said, "Maybe it's a local." She shot back, "At this hour?" I had no answer. The sound kept coming at measured intervals. Thud, silence, thud. No urgency, just a steady, patient rhythm.
as if whoever was out there wasn't in any rush. We tried to ignore it, but my mind latched onto every impact, waiting for the next one.
When too many seconds passed between blows, I'd think it was over. Then, another thud would break the silence. My wife grew increasingly restless. "It sounds closer," she said. I strained my ears. She was right. The sound was louder now. I tried to reassure her. Sounds play tricks in the mountains. Echoes make things seem nearer. But within a few minutes, even I could tell the direction was shifting. It had started deep in the woods, but now it seemed to be coming from the back edge of the meadow. My wife pleaded, "Don't go out there." I didn't respond. My brain said stay put, but the other part of me felt I needed to show I wasn't scared. Or maybe I just needed proof that there was a simple explanation. I said, "I'll just look nearby." She grabbed my hand. "No, let whatever it is chop its wood." I countered. "It might wake the kids. I won't go far." She kept refusing, but I wanted to project calm for my family. Maybe I wanted to convince myself too. I grabbed the flashlight, took the firearm, unzipped the tent, and stepped out. The cold hit me immediately. I scanned the meadow, the truck, the tree line. Nothing. But the axe blows were still coming. I aimed the light toward the trees. Trunk after trunk appeared in the beam, then dissolved back into shadow. I moved forward slowly. My wife was near the tent zipper, watching me. I gestured for her to get inside. The forest sat on a slight slope below the meadow. As I passed between the first trees, dry leaves and small twigs crunched under my boots. Every step unnaturally loud. The axe sound shifted, sometimes from the right, sometimes from straight ahead. I kept swinging the light. It felt close now. I stopped. I was sure it was coming from behind a large oak on my right. I aimed the beam at the oak. Nothing but thick trunk and surrounding bushes. No person, no blade. Then the sound came from my left. I spun around. Nothing. I took a few more steps. A small clearing opened up ahead, ringed by trees. And the sound was definitely coming from right there. I swept the entire area with the light. Empty ground, silent trees. No axe, no man, no fresh-cut timber. I examined trunk after trunk, but couldn't find a single fresh mark anywhere. Yet the sound still came. This time, it seemed to land right on the tree in front of me. I watched the trunk with my own eyes. No visible impact, but the sound came from that exact spot. Sweat beaded on my back despite the cold. I realized I'd moved farther into the woods than I meant to. The camp lights were just dim pinpricks through the branches now. I raised my voice. "Who's there?" No answer. Silence. Then, thud. From behind me this time. I spun around fast, flashlight blazing. Nothing. In that moment, it hit me that this was no ordinary woodcutter. The sound was real, but the source was completely invisible. I steadied myself and spoke louder. "Whoever you are, we're not here to bother you." The sound stopped. I pressed on. "I'm with my family. We're just staying one night. We'll be gone at sunrise." The forest had gone completely mute. I waited. No response. Finally, I said, "Please, don't disturb us." Then, without looking back, I started walking toward the meadow. My pace quickened. I didn't want to run because I didn't want to show fear, but every cell in my body was screaming to get out of those trees. When I broke back into the open, my wife was standing outside the tent.
"Who was it?" she demanded. Without slowing down, I said, "A local, chopping wood." I told him to knock it off. She stared, incredulous. What was he doing out here at this hour? I shrugged. Maybe came up from a village below. She pressed. "Did you actually see him?" That question made me pause. Then I lied again. "Yeah, from a distance." I said it to shield her from the real horror. We got back inside the tent, and after that, the axe sounds really did stop. I thought maybe, whatever it was, it would leave us alone. We both lay back down. No more sounds for a long time. Our breathing finally slowed to normal. I kept the flashlight by my side and closed my eyes. I don't remember falling asleep, but at some point, I was yanked awake by a noise that took a few seconds to place. Children laughing. The sound was coming from outside. I blinked, first thinking maybe dawn had come and the kids had gotten out of the camper. But inside the tent, it was still pitch black. I checked my phone. Night wasn't over yet. Outside, I heard the patter of small feet on grass. Then my older son's laugh, unmistakable, with that little hitch where he catches his breath. I bolted upright. My wife was already awake, eyes wide, staring at the zipper. I whispered, "How did the kids get out?" She shook her head. She hadn't opened the door. Then I heard my younger son's voice. "Give me some too!" More laughter. Footsteps running. I started to get up, but my wife grabbed my arm. "Wait." I said, "Let me go check on them." She whispered, "That's not our kids." Those words sent a shiver straight down my spine, because that same suspicion had just crossed my mind. Our kids were locked inside the camper. They didn't have a key. And even if they had gotten out somehow, they wouldn't be laughing and playing in the middle of this night. Not in this place. I listened closer. The voices were moving around the tent. Laughter from the right, then from the left, then from right behind. Then suddenly, my wife's own voice came from outside. "Don't go that way. You'll fall." I looked at my wife. She was sitting right across from me, mouth closed, hand on my arm. Then her voice came again. "It's a drop-off. Come back here." A few seconds later, I heard my own laugh echo from outside. Then my own voice. "Let them play. They'll be fine." I'll never forget that moment. Inside the tent, we sat in stunned silence. Our real kids were asleep in the truck. But outside, the voices of our entire family were circling us, slowly drawing closer to the tent. We knew now, whatever was out there wasn't just mimicking our kids. It was copying all of us. My wife, who was a Hafiz, immediately began reciting verses. I joined her. As soon as the recitation started, the children's laughter outside began to fade. First, the running footsteps stopped. Then my recorded voice cut off. Then my wife's voice vanished too. After a few moments, total silence returned outside. We didn't stop reciting. A while later, I felt a gentle pressure on the tent fabric, like someone was dragging a finger or hand across the material from outside. The pressure moved slowly toward the zipper.
My wife raised her voice, reciting even louder. At that exact instant, the pressure let up. But we heard footsteps again. Heavy ones this time. Not children's steps. Something larger and heavier was approaching. That heavy tread moved slowly, deliberately, until it stopped right in front of the zipper. The lock on the zipper jiggled slightly. I grabbed the zipper from the inside and held it firm. For a few seconds, I felt a gentle tug on the other side, testing. My heart was pounding like a war drum. My wife continued her recitation without pause. Then, suddenly, the pressure on the zipper stopped. The footsteps moved away from the tent, toward the camper. A moment later, we heard two heavy taps against the truck's metal body. Clang, clang. I said to my wife, "The kids are in there. I need to check on them." She shot back, "No, don't go out. That's exactly what it wants." I went silent. We both resumed reciting. For a while after that, the sounds wafted in from outside. Muffled laughter, phantom footsteps, even copies of our own voices. But we didn't respond. We didn't unzip. We just kept reciting. Then, all at once, the sound stopped, like someone had flipped a switch. It was as if nothing had ever been there. We stayed silent and still for a long time. No clue how much time had passed. Finally, in the far distance, a bird called out. Then another. We peeked through the tent fabric. The sky's inkiness was starting to fade. A faint glow was rising behind the mountain peaks. My wife whispered, "Morning's coming." We didn't rush out right away. We waited until the light outside was clear enough. Then, very cautiously, I unzipped the tent. It was the same meadow, the same forest, the same truck. But the night's dead silence was gone. A gentle breeze moved the branches. Distant birdsong filled the air. We both headed straight for the camper.
I unlocked the door. The kids were in their bunks. One had kicked off his blanket. Another was turned over. The youngest lay still and peaceful. We checked them carefully. They were perfectly fine. The door was still locked the way we'd left it. Their shoes and gear were in place. They hadn't stepped outside all night. We didn't tell them a word about what happened. I packed up at warp speed. Sleeping bags, dishes, flashlight, all of it back in the truck. We didn't even eat breakfast there. Just gave the kids some biscuits and milk. My only goal was getting the hell out of that place. I fired up the truck. My wife took her seat. The kids settled into the back. We turned around and drove down from that meadow. After a couple of hours, we finally reached a safe spot, a roadside diner with other people around. We took a break there, rested, then continued on. That's my story. I'm sharing it because I think people need to know that the world is stranger and scarier than we give it credit for. I hope you'll share it on your channel. Thanks for letting me tell it. Folks, I hope today's story sent a chill down your spine. If you enjoyed this bone-chilling ride, don't forget to smash that like button. And if you haven't caught the other two stories yet, you better go listen right now. Take care of yourselves, stay safe, and never stop questioning the shadows. See you in the next one.